or eat something, we are doing really social distancing. You are as far away as you can be, but so it's safe. I'm looking at the people here behind the camera and they tell me when I really have to start the story. We are now just waiting. I'm curious. You see, by the way, you can ask me questions and I'll try to answer them, of course. And I know some people from the Netherlands are watching, so if you want to ask a question, you can do it in Dutch, not a problem. The people behind the camera can't read it, so they will show it to me on an iPad. So it's, but you don't have to ask questions if you don't feel comfortable. Don't worry about it. But it would be cool. Und wenn Sie aus Deutschland sind, bitteschön, können Sie auch unsere Fragen stellen. Ich kann auch ein wenig Deutsch, so das geht auch. Et quand vous de la France ou de Québec, les questions, ok, c'est peu difficile pour moi, mais ça va. And in my own language, ik kan het ook wel in plat. Als je dat horen wil, kun je gewoon in plat wat vragen en ik zal het ook beantwoorden.
Yeah. So Ellen Barnes says, so good to see you, Jan.
Hey, great. Well, great I can't see you, but I'm glad you're there. Ellen Barr, yes. Elaine Barr. Elaine Burns. Oh, Elaine, of course. I don't have to see you to know you. And Jamie.
Says hello.
Hi, Jamie. Nice to see you here, and I will tell you the story. Where are you from, Jamie?
We got a little bit of a lag too between you talking and then it going out.
Okay,
So,
okay.
just so you know,
Well, wait.
I know Jamie. She's from Havasu.
Oh, hi, Jamie from Havasu.
All right. So it's a little after. You wanna start?
Let's start.
Got 62 people, 64 people watching.
Hey, hi 64 people. You're watching the history of the London Bridge, and it's quite a story. We start, of course, at the beginning. And the beginning is, if you look up, you see a gate. It's a gate, and if you look at the top, you see a year, 1862. Well, if you see 1862, you know for sure this gate is not from Lake Havasu, because in 1862 here was nothing. Well, nothing. There was a lot. A beautiful desert. There was no lake, just the Colorado River. And the Chemehuevi Indians lived on the river. They stayed here during the winter. In summer they went a little bit up to Kingman. It was a little cooler. And yeah, that was Lake Havasu. It didn't exist. This gate came from England. It's from a castle. It's called Whitley Castle, Whitley Court, and it's in Worcestershire. Americans would call it Worcestershire, like Countryshire Road here. The British would say Countryshire. Well, who cares really? Worcestershire, the capital of Worcestershire is Worcester. Worcester. That's where they make the Worcester sauce. And if you call it Worcester or Worcester, it tastes the same, doesn't it? The castle was an old English castle. Dull. I have to say, British sometimes are a little dull. They have wonderful humor, but this castle looked dull, and the owner of that castle in the 1840s wanted to Italianate his castle. You know what he did? He had everything redone. Pillars on it, wonderful lawns with fountains, a new gate and a new fence. Here's the new gate. The gate was made in England, and it has been, before it came at the castle, it has been on an exposition in Paris. So it's not just a gate, it's a special one. Well, like always, Murphy is around. And Murphy was around with Whitley Course too. Because in the 1930s, the castle burned down. It was a fire in the kitchen, everything burned down, only the walls stayed. Nobody lived there anymore, and it kind of deteriorated. In the 60s, it was so far gone that the owner who owned it then wanted to sell it. You could even buy half a fountain. And Robert McCulloch, who was there, saw the gate, and he bought the gate for Lake Havasu because he said it would look nice with his bridge at the back there. Well, it looks nice, doesn't it? So he brought it over. I've been there in Whitley Court, and it looks very nice now. It's now owned by the English Heritage Foundation. I brought a picture for them because I wanted to show them what we did with the gate, and they were kind of jealous. They told me they wanted the gate back. Well, you know, I'm not the owner of the gate, and I'm sure that won't happen. When we walk down here, we go in the direction of and there you see two pedestals with the dragons on it. That's really weird. You see on it, it says City of London, and the dragons are holding a coat of arms of the City of London. It's a red cross. That's the English flag. If you look at the flag, the flag isn't there. It's too windy. When it gets a little windy, the flags always go down. But okay, it's from the City of London, the coat of arms of the City of London, a red cross and a sword. If you go to London right now, you always go by the dragons with the coat of arms. Any street you enter there, you see this. I've been there, you see it on every street. But what a weird thing, if you go beyond these ones, that ain't no London. Well, we call it London English Village, but it isn't London. But once upon a time, when Robert McCulloch dedicated the bridge, he gave 1 acre of land next to the bridge to the City of London. The City of London accepted it, and they built the pub on it, what's now the Visitor Center. Inside we have still a plaque that says this building is built by the City of London. Well, they had it for a few years, but they had some problems with the renters, and they sold it again. But we kept the pedestals. We will see another one on the other side. If we walk down here, yeah, it's kind of horrible now. The fountain is a little bit in disrepair. It will be repaired and it will go again. And most people ask me, where's that fountain from? They think it's a very, very special one. Let me tell you. The fountain was built in 1999. The stones are from Mexico, and the lions are from a landscape company in Vegas. Nothing old, but it looks nice. At least I think it looks very nice. Okay, we walk down here. And as you see, the village looks very nice. It's all has been painted, new stones. To the right is the visitor center. Yeah, the visitor center is closed right now, but we hope that it will be open pretty soon again, because we have a beautiful visitor center, just renovated. When we are open again, please come in. All right. There's a lot going on, I see, down there. We have all kinds of shops, Havasu gear, brewed and blended, the Blue Chair, burgers by the bridge. Well, they are open, but probably only for delivery. For takeout, yeah, I see it. All right, you see a lot of things going on because they are working on the docks. It's a little noisy, so we have to move over a little bit to another side. And how's the sound here of the Do you hear it?
That should be pretty good because it's all.
It's in the distance. Yeah. Okay. Oh my goodness, everywhere is something going on. Well, here's the bridge. And I know a lot of people in Lake Havasu saying, oh yeah, the bridge, I've seen the bridge all the time. It's getting old. Well, it's not getting old. It is old. It's beautiful. And to be honest, it's the only old London bridge. There is in London a new bridge now when McCulloch took this over, but this one was dedicated in 1831. But before this bridge, there was another bridge. That was the medieval bridge from 1200 until 1800. Before the medieval bridge, there was another bridge. There have been a lot of bridges, and the first one was built by the Romans in the year 50. When the Romans left in the year 400, they left kind of an empty space. We don't know really what happened. We only know that the Vikings were there. And one day the Vikings were in charge of the London Bridge, the Danes. And the Norwegian Vikings wanted to have the bridge. They wanted to occupy it. So what they did, they came over. King Olaf from the bridge, he came over and he went to the bridge, pulled the ropes around it and pulled it down. The bridge fell. My goodness, just like everything is happening here today. I'm sorry about that, but that's the way we live. He pulled the bridge down, and his bard, his poet who was with him, made a song, and the song was called London Bridge is Falling Down. And Olaf is a wonderful king, and Olaf did a lot of good stuff. Well, that song, sung by the bard of Olaf, stayed around, and it was still there in the Middle Ages when one of the kings of England gave the bridge to his wife as a present. He gave money with it, but the Queen didn't use the money to keep up the bridge. She used it for something else. I have no idea for what, but she used it for something. And the people in London started to sing, London Bridge is falling down, my fair lady, build it up. And of course you've all played that, London Bridge is falling down, holding hands together, and if you haven't done it, do it now. All right, this bridge, built in 1831, made of granite, total massive granite, and that was very heavy. The granite was so heavy that the bridge was sinking down into the underground. And well, around the 50s, they had to do something with the bridge because it was sinking. And if a bridge sinks a little bit, that's okay, but not too much. So the City of London tried to find a thing to do with it. They wanted to sell the bridge. How they made the bridge, I'll tell you somewhere else because it's getting noisy up here. Hello ladies, I don't want to disturb you, but we are on a streaming video, so I want to tell something about the bridge here. All right, here's the bridge.
You're out of frame.
Yeah, no, you can say that's not a problem.
Are you sure?
Oh yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Well, it's. I brought you over here because I want you to show how big these stones are. Look at them. Massive granite. The whole bridge in London. And I told you already, the bridge was dedicated in 1831. That was in a time they didn't have electricity, no steam, just manpower. So all these stones must have been cut down, made in this shape by people, by hand. Let me tell you a little bit how they did that. The first guy who came over here had a drill this size with a ball on it, and he started pounding. He made a hole about 2 inches deep. Next to it, 6 inches apart, other hole, other hole, other hole, other hole. When these holes were done, they put feathers in it. A feather is a piece of iron, this shape, and another one, this shape. They put it in the holes, and put a wedge in it. And then they started pounding with a heavy hammer over and over and over and over and over again until the rock split. But the rock always splits in its own way, never like you want it. It went all like this. And then they use their hammers and chisels and make it in the right shape and in the right size by hand. The people who did it, well, didn't have a good life. They lived in that neighborhood, but tough life. They didn't have health insurance. They didn't have Obamacare. They didn't have Trump care. They had no care. So when they got something on their leg, what happened? They were done. They got money, but they probably got coupons from the company store. So they could only use it in that place. So it was not a good life. And you know what? When the bridge was dedicated and there was a big 21-course dinner, guess who weren't there? The people who worked there in the quarries. And I hope if you go next time and you see an old building like the London Bridge, think about those people too. Because this was not the only one they did. Buckingham Palace was built this way, and the buildings in Rome and the pyramids in Egypt and the pyramids in Mexico from the Aztecs, and let's not even talk about the big Chinese wall, always done by hand by people. And it always makes me a little sad. So one day when you see something old, think about these people. Well, before we start to cry, let's do something fun, because these stones had to go out of the quarry. They had big trucks, big lorries. They put the stones on it, 12 horses in front of it, pulled it out, down to the harbor, on a barge, around the channel, up the River Thames, and that's where they built the bridge. Yeah, and it was all dedicated in 1831. Well, you know what? If you see the steps up here, there are 51 steps. We are going up there. You've got an easy one. You can stay just down. Do we have questions? No. Okay. You see, if you are online, you can ask a question and I will answer. But now I go on the steps, and it's 51 steps, so I'll do it at as fast as possible. Let's go. Wow, not bad for an old guy, right? 51 steps up. But you know why that happened? Because I'm Dutch. We are always used to walk on steps. My oldest son lived for a while in a house. When he had to go to his house, he had to climb first 51 steps every day. All right. There they are, our founding fathers. On the left, Robert Paxton McCulloch. On the right, C.V. Wood. They're holding the plans for Lake Havasu. Without those guys, we wouldn't have been here. Robert Paxton McCulloch. And I would like to tell you something about Paxton McCulloch. And maybe if you're going to sit there, right? I always like to have my students in front of me. I don't know why, but...
Were the steps a part of the original bridge?
Pardon me?
Were the steps originally part of the bridge?
Yeah. The steps were part of the bridge. They came with the bridge. The bridge from 1831.
Oh, so you want me to sit?
Yeah, all right. Haha. There we sit. Well, after a climb of 51 steps, that's necessary. Not for me, but for the people who are with me. All right, here we are sitting at the feet of our founding fathers. Robert Paxton McCulloch. McCulloch Boulevard, we are sitting next to McCulloch Boulevard, was born in Illinois, but his family came from Wisconsin. And I have to tell you, McCulloch was born, we often say with a silver spoon in his mouth, but he was born with 2 golden spoons in his mouth. His family did something in oil in Illinois, so there was some money from that side. And when his grandfather from his mother's side died, he got a lot of money, all together with his siblings. There were 3 kids, 3 McCulloch kids. The oldest one was Mary. Then we got Robert, Bob, and the 3rd one was John. Mary didn't have to work all her life because she got all that money, millions. And she lived in New Jersey, and she had in her yard a court, and she played croquet all the time. She loved that. She is even one of the founders of the Croquet Federation of the United States. And she's even in the Hall of Fame of Croquet, and I assume you've all been there, right? If you have been in the Hall of Fame of Croquet, please let me know, because I would love to meet someone who's ever been there. It's somewhere in Miami. Mary has written a book about her life. She was kind of, maybe it's a socialite, they call it. John was the youngest one, and John went to Yale. He spoke 10 languages, and he was a political writer. And Bob in the middle, Bob was the businessman. He even had already a business when he was on a university. Bob always had businesses with, and it often had to do with small engines. He built carts, he built boat engines, he built, well, his most important thing he built were the chainsaws. That's why we know him from. Bob married Barbara and Briggs. And as you hear the name Briggs, then you know it's from Briggs and Stratton lawn mowers, small engines too. All right, Bob had his factory, and his main factory was in Los Angeles. But he had to leave Los Angeles because LAX airport was expanding and he needed another spot. He knew about Lake Havasu because he owned at the end of the peninsula, there was no channel, peninsula, he owned a piece of land and he tested his boat engines there. But for the rest it was just desert, nothing else. It was a road coming from Route 66. There was no road to Parker. That was all. But he wanted that. He said, I want to move my factory to Lake Havasu. And I want to build a city of about 70,000 people. He started that, but it's easier said than done, because for a city you need people. How do you get people here? He moved his factories and some of the workers came with it, and it started. But it didn't go fast enough. He wanted more people over here. They didn't come over by car because Phoenix was a long ride over here, and Phoenix was not that big. The closest town really was Los Angeles, and it took hours to get here. Vegas was just beginning. So McCulloch bought 10 airplanes, 10 Super Constellations and Electras. On the peninsula was a little airstrip from World War II, Site 6 they called it. And, well, people could land there, go fishing a little bit, but McCulloch bought his 10 airplanes and called it McCulloch Airways, Lake Havasu on it, And he invited people to come over here, free ride, free stay, free food, for 3 days. Who wouldn't do that? Well, a lot of people did that because they love to be out here for a little bit. But you understand, of course, McCulloch didn't do that because he loved the people. He wanted to sell his land. Of course, you've all heard from timeshare, right? It was something like that. They brought you in, he wined and dined you, but the next day, the white jeeps were waiting, and they drove you around and said, this is a wonderful spot. And when you're retired, you want to live here. This will be, look at the beautiful lake. They went out with you on the lake, and they got some water out of the lake. They drank from it, said, oh, the lake is so clean, it's beautiful. Well, some people bought land, and some didn't. A lot didn't. I think in total he has had about 35,000 people over here in his airplanes. The city grew, but not fast enough. And then he heard that London Bridge was for sale. And I have heard different stories about it, but the most common is McCulloch said, I want to buy that. And people said, oh my goodness, Bob, what are you doing? Buying a bridge and bring it over to the United States? You must be plain stupid. Well, McCulloch bought it. There were more buyers. Red Skelton was one of the buyers. He wanted to buy it. He wanted to make a theater of it. Some of the casinos bid on it. Some of the Arab countries bid on it. But McCulloch got it because I think the British liked that the best, the Londoners, because he wanted to keep it as a bridge. He bought it for $2.5 million, and it cost him about $6-7 million to bring it over and build it up again. That's what he did. And the bridge is here. A lot of people said, oh my God, what a stupid man. But I think that's one of the smarter things he has ever done. If he had spent that money on ads in the paper, on TV spots, nobody would have remembered it. But when he brought the bridge over, it was all over the news. It was in every paper and people talked about it. It was on the late night show. So, and it still happens. We still get people down here who want to know something about the London Bridge. If you make a movie about Arizona, that's beautiful and a lot of people like to do that, but you're pretty soon done. But you've had the cactus, you've had the desert, you've had the coyotes, and then they need something fun in it. And then they think, oh, Havasu. And one part of the Arizona movie is then about Lake Havasu. We get a lot of people, travelers who write about it. Well, it's time for us to walk across the bridge now too. Are you ready? Let's go. No.
About the locks?
Pardon me?
The locks?
Yeah. Not here, but at the end. I'll tell you later about those locks. First, this one. This is about the dedication. That is a dedication plaque. Whoever was there on the other side of the road, that's the first stone that's laid. But we will end up there, and then I'll tell you about these locks that are on it. Okay, there we go. The bridge we are walking across has the same size as the bridge in London, so you can see now how wide the River Thames is. There are people who tell me all the time it's not as long as it was in London. Yes, it is. The only difference is the abutments are still in London. We got the whole bridge, 5 arches. Maybe it's good to stop here a little bit and look around. You have a nice view of the English village. It's not as busy as it is most of the time, but they're working on it. Like Burkers on the Bridge are doing some renovations. Here the docks are changed. It's a little empty now. Most of the time there are a lot of people. But It is what it is. Okay, here's another nice view. Of course, you see they are working on the docks right down here. There are the cabana boat, the rubber ducky, the rental place, the jet boat. The boat to the casino is not running because of the COVID-19. So that's a pity. You can go across the river. At the end of the channel, you see a little lighthouse. I think we have now 29 of those lighthouses, and they are all imitations of lighthouses from all of the United States. The lighthouses on the east side of the lake are from the east coast, west side are from the west coast, and the lighthouses on the island are from the Great Lakes. This is the most ugly thing I've ever seen. This stuff around a beautiful antique. How is it possible? Why is that? I haven't seen it before. Okay, I'm sorry. I don't like it. But what's going on? We are here at the street light. These street lights came with the bridge. They were on the bridge in London when the bridge was built in 1831. You can see it at the bottom. T. Potter and Sons, South Molton Street, West in London. I looked for it when I was in London, but I couldn't find it. It's iron. Where does it come from? Well, if you know a little about history, then you know that this bridge was built in 1831. In 1815, Napoleon escaped from Elba. He got his army behind him, and he fought the British army in Waterloo, in Belgium, the Battle of Waterloo. Napoleon lost. He found his Waterloo, and the general of the British took all Napoleon's cannons and brought them over to London. When the bridge was built, they needed iron. So they got all Napoleon's cannons and melted them. They melted them, and they made them into street lights. So this was once upon a time a cannon of Napoleon. I like that, don't you? Make cannons into street lights. Well, and I think Napoleon must have loved it, because he must sure be happy about it that his cannons are in Lake Havasu City. And there they are. A little bit about, if you look to the right, these are the Chemehuevi Mountains. It's named after the Chemehuevi tribe that has their reservation on the other side of the lake. There is a casino, but I told you already, casino closed for now. We're halfway. Here is a little thing you can see. It's a little, that is from the little church that was on the old medieval bridge. That was their coat of arms. And they put it back on this bridge. Can you imagine? There has been a bridge like this since the year 50. A bridge over the River Thames. And we are walking across it now in 2020. Almost 2,000 years. I often wonder how many people have walked across these bridges from Roman times until now. Well, I can't even come up with a number, because for a long time it was the medieval bridge was the only bridge over the River Thames. It was a very special one because it had houses on it. There was a little street in the middle, about 10 till 12 feet wide. People had to go across it, but there were shops and there were a lot of carriages going back and forth. It was very busy and dangerous too because there were wooden houses on it. There have been quite some fires. There was one big fire and there was a fire on both sides of the bridge and the people got trapped. Well, a lot of them jumped because the fire came closer and closer. They jumped, and medieval people couldn't swim, so they were picked up by boats, but there were so many people hanging on to the boats that the boat sank again. That day, that fire in about 1200 something, about 3,000 people were killed by fire and drowning. Yeah. Across the bridge, this one must have gone a lot of people. I'm almost sure the Beatles went across it. And not to make anybody mad, and the Rolling Stones too. And Queen Elizabeth. And you name it. Probably Winston Churchill, Roosevelt. You name it. Everybody who has been in London has been across this bridge. So it's kind of weird to imagine that. Very weird. So many people. Okay. We go across the walkway. We are always law-obedient citizens. I'll push the button because even if you are virtual with me, I want you to... Okay. We're going down the steps here for a little bit. And just these 2 steps down, we are on the other side of the bridge right now. And when I started my tour, was someone who told me there is an inscription on the bridge. You really have to see that. Well, I looked at it and I want to show you that too. It's an inscription of, I think, 2 American soldiers in London. Let's go there. If you turn around here, there you see a little, can you see it? Yeah. There it is. Got it? It says, Sergeant Fitzwater, PFC Smith. On top of it, over Fitzwater is 1942. It's a little vague, and under it is an insignia. It's a 1. Well, the 1 is from the big red one, the 1st Infantry Division. 1942. After Pearl Harbor, the United States entered the war, and soldiers went over to London. 2 of them were Fitzwater and Smith. They stayed in London, and it was always my question. What is going on? Who are these people? I tried to find something. I went through... Okay, there we go. I Googled it. I have been in touch with the Museum of the Big Red One. We couldn't find anything about him. Well, so there are 2 possibilities. Fitzwater and Smith were in London as soldiers, and they scribbled the name in there. Another possibility is Fitzwater and Smith were in Lake Havasu in the 80s. They were on vacation. They said, oh, remember we were in London? Let's scribble our name in there. I don't like the second thought. It's kind of not so nice. I wish it would have been something from London. And I thought it always had to be a secret. We didn't know about it. And then one day, some people came into the visitor center and they said, "Is that inscription of our neighbor Fitzwater still there?" Well, when I heard it, I jumped. I said, "I want to know about it." Yeah, Fitzwater is in Tucson. He stays with his daughter for the winter. And I got her phone number. I called and I said, "I would love to talk to Mr. Fitzwater." She said, "Well, you can't, because he's totally deaf. He doesn't want to talk to anybody because he gets so frustrated." And she said, "But I have a paper he wrote about it." She sent me that, and I have here the picture of Mr. Fitzwater. This is Mr. Fitzwater when he was in the army. So he went to London, and Mr. Fitzwater and Smith did something right, and the captain said, "Okay, you can go to London and have a party, do something, have some good times." So they went, and they found the bridge, and they found the bridge and they scribbled the name in there. I was so happy to know about that, because Fitzwater had been here really in the 80s, and he had looked for it and he found it again. If someone would have written that in a book, someone scribbled the name on the bridge in London and the bridge came over to the United States and we found it again, it's unbelievable. Okay, here's Fitzwater again. This is Fitzwater when he was here in Lake Havasu, and he found his inscription again. Fitzwater was a good guy. Look at him. He had some, what do you call it, memorabilia? No, he did something in the war. He has been wounded, and so for sure, Fitzwater and Smith's birthday, and I said, "You know what? Why don't you come over here?" Because he went back to Montana, and I will show him around. We will pay everything for him. But his daughter said, "No, he won't do it. He's a little stubborn." I don't know why. People always say that older men get stubborn. I've never heard about that, but have you? Maybe you do, right? Well, he didn't want to come over. I said, "Well, if you bring him back to Montana, maybe you drive by accident." She said, "Well, I can't. He is 96 years and he has his own truck and he goes home in his own truck." So that didn't happen. So I got this whole story, and that was from England. An inscription came over to Lake Havasu. And a little bit ago, they found something under the bridge. I don't know if you can see it there. It says, "Here lies Jack Hardy." Do you see it at the right? Here lies Jack Hardy. Maybe you see it. Maybe you have to come over here to see it better. Jack Hardy. That was laying under the bridge, in the bridge, and it was a piece of concrete, and the guys had to do some work on it, and they found this stone and said, "Okay, we are not digging anymore. Here lies Jack Hardy. There must be a body under it." But they still had to move on, and then they found it. I got that thing, and I heard a story about it. Jack Hardy was one of the reporters of the News Herald, and he wrote some columns about the bridge, and he was a little critical, and the people who built the bridge didn't like that. They were kind of sick of him, and as a joke, they had a doll made in his shape, like Jack Hardy, and they put pins in it as a voodoo doll, and they buried him. They didn't want it here anymore. I got him, and I don't know if you can see it like this. Here's Jack Hardy. I showed it to someone who knew Jack Hardy, and when he looked at it, he said, "Oh my God, that's Jack Hardy." I hadn't told him about that. This Jack Hardy has been under the bridge, in the bridge, for 40 years, buried. I didn't see the pins anymore, but his daughter, who lives here, recognized it, and if you go in the history of the paper, you will find stories about it. Jack Hardy. Well, you know, we have a Jack Hardy Park here, so he was other people liked them better than the builders of the bridge. All right, there goes Jack again. All right, let's go up. So you see, there is always something around the bridge you had never heard of, maybe. That is so much about everything. Okay. To the right is the Heat Hotel. Across the road is the London Bridge Resort with the shops from the London Bridge Resort. And here you have a nice view of Lake Havasu. Lake Havasu is not 70,000 people yet. We are 55,000 now. In Lake Havasu, we always say we don't have seasons. Well, we have seasons, but not spring, fall, and winter. Well, we are now in a corona season, but that's another one. Most of the time we call it. We have spring break season, boating season, snowbird season, but this is a special year. You see, Lake Havasu is pretty extended, and we look now straight ahead at the Mojave Mountains. Okay, when you've got your cup of coffee or a little drink again, I want to tell you something. Okay, let's stop here for a second. If you look to the right or straight ahead now, you see the channel. The channel was built when the bridge was here. You know what? That was a problem. McCulloch had a bridge but no channel. So he built first the bridge. He built the bridge. First he built a concrete structure in the shape of the bridge. Then they put the stones against it, and not all the stones, but just the outside. The inside he left in London. And then they put slices of the stones against it. So what you see is what you saw in London, but the inside is different. The inside of the bridge is hollow, you can walk through it. I've been there once and it's kind of interesting. There are bats living inside, and in summer they fly out. But in the distance you see the golf course that's made by the sand, the dirt that came out of building it. And on the other side you see the Whipple Mountains, with of course Cupcake Mountain. That's our favorite Cupcake Mountain. There has been a time that people put flares on the cupcake when we had our anniversary. To the left there are some buildings, London Bridge Resort. Oh, here you can see the UK flag. You see the red cross in the middle is the English flag. The diagonal is the Scottish flag. They don't have the Wales flag in it because the Wales flag has a dragon in it. I don't know how they got that going. In the medieval bridge it was not easy to get across it because it was not so wide, all these houses on the side, and it was very busy. It took sometimes more than an hour to get across it. So, the Lord Mayor of London said we have to do something about it. yeah, walking across the bridge for an hour, that takes too much. He said everybody who crosses the bridge has to stay on the right side. And when people did that, it went much better. And ever since, the British are driving on the right side of the road. And in all the colonies of the British, they do that, except United States and England and Canada, they drive on the right side. Everybody in Europe drives on the right side. And that's Napoleon's fault. Napoleon said, the British are driving on the left, I'm going to drive on the right side of the road. And I still don't know why America is driving on the right side, because we were a colony of England. Okay, we're almost at the end now. Here is the first stone that's laid. There's some story on it. But I show you this especially because this is granite, but it's polished. If we would polish our whole bridge, it would look like this. McCulloch knew that because he sold the inside of the bridge. He brought the outside over to the United States. He sold the inside in England, and he sold it to people who make headstones, countertops. This could be a nice countertop. Well, he got about $2.5 million for it, for the inside. Remember, he bought it for $2.5 million. Robert McCulloch died in '76. He was 65 years old. His company was sold first to Black & Decker. It has been part of a Taiwanese company. Now it's owned by Husqvarna from Sweden. The company's still there. The other day I looked it up, and if you look for McCulloch, you can still buy McCulloch chainsaws. But God knows where they are made. Not in Lake Havasu. And then this one. This is what we call love's locks. If two people love each other a lot, they buy a lock. If you do it right, you engrave your name. You hang it here, the two of you, and they throw the key in the river. It's together forever. Some people write the name on it with a pen, with ink. I think that's not right. If you do it right, have it engraved. And what is even weirder, maybe you have to come over a little closer, you can see it. Here, this one. This is a lock that has a number. What do you think? Forever? If you know the combination, you can open up again. I found a solution for that. I call this one a spring break lock. It's for a week. And then you know the number, take the lock off. There are some very nice ones. Here is one on this side. It says, Fred and Carla, 50 years. That's a lock as sturdy as you have never seen. Maybe you can come over here and show that lock. See? Fred and Carla, 50 years. Now we are talking lock. People come over here when they are getting married in their gowns, and they put the lock as part of the ceremony. They put a lock on the river. This is a very special place down here, because here on this spot where I'm standing now, they have seen Jack the Ripper for the last time. They almost got him. The cops were behind him. He was running up the bridge, and then he disappeared. I don't want to be in that spot.
What's that?
I don't want to be in the spot where Jack the Ripper was.
Oh.
Come on. It's fun to see. If you look up there, there are some numbers left, because when the bridge was brought over, Each stone had a number because they had to put it back together again. These big things, these corbels, were from a later date. The bridge was built in 1831. 1831. In 1900, the bridge was too small. They had to make the bridge a little wider, so they put these corbels on it, and that's why the bridge, there is some nice numbers. So each, in the visitor center, we have a big picture of all the numbers, so when we're open again, come on in, visitor center, and you will see the whole thing. We're almost at the end, so if you have a question, please ask it. Or tell us that you like it. Or go to our website, golakehavasu.com, with all the information. Of course, we have a Facebook page and Instagram and Twitter and whatever exists on the internet, we're on there. And the lady who does this is just behind me. You won't see her now, but it's Tara, and Tara takes care of that whole thing. All right, here we are. We have a nice view here from the bridge, don't you think so? I want to show you something. This bridge was in London during World War II, and there have been some fights over London because Hitler wanted to invade England in the 40s, 39, 40s, and he shot V1s and V2s, big rockets, to London. He bombed London, and one day there was a fight over London. There was a Messerschmitt, a German fighter, and a Spitfire, a British fighter. They were over the London Bridge and they were circling around and shooting at each other. And at a certain time, the Spitfire shot the Messerschmitt, and the Messerschmitt crashed on that pier. Not the first one, but the second one. The Spitfire was behind him and was shooting at him. That's why you see these holes, these indentations in that spot. If you look on the left side, there are some more of these little holes. This is the only place in the continental United States where you can see real World War II damage. Of course, it is damage in the hearts of people, because a lot of Americans went over to Europe and liberated Europe again. I could tell you a whole story about it, but that's what we do next time, because we are pretty much at the end of our tour. If you have a question, you have to be quick. If you have a question, you can email me at Jan, at golakehavasu.com, or go on our Facebook page, and Tara knows everything too, so Tara will answer all the questions. She's saying no, but she knows a lot about it. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much wherever you are. I loved it that you were with me. It was quite of an experiment, but I loved it. Thank you so much, and see you back in an all open and bustling and hustling and whatever Lake Havasu. Thank you.